welcome to You Make the Difference. I'm Wanda Walker, and today I'm talking to Jessica David, who's the director of Emmaus House LaGrange. Welcome to the show, Jessica.
Thank you so much for having me.
Jessica, you have a really big job running the Emmaus House. And we're going to talk about that a little bit and what that entails. And you reach out to the homeless, men, women, children, families. And how many do you have?
Our mission has grown from just serving women, and last night we had, I think, 36 people.
Yes, and you know, when you try to find shelter for one person, that's a big job, but when you're trying to find shelter for 36, that's a tremendous job, isn't it?
It is overwhelming sometimes.
Yes. Can you tell us about your background and experience in dealing with the homeless that brought you here to LaGrange and prepared you for what you're doing?
Well, God calls us all to a certain people group, and homeless people have always been mine. They've always had my attention for my whole life. And then I was fortunate enough to go to college in a town that had a large homeless population, and I say fortunate because that was where I studied with them. And I went to the College of Charleston in South Carolina, and I worked at Crisis Ministries, and I learned about a men's shelter, and I interned with a family shelter. And then I did some work in Atlanta for the food bank, and then got to know lots of homeless shelters that way. And so I've studied it professionally, and I've volunteered through it, and then landed in LaGrange, and the second time I moved here and just hit the ground running.
Yes, you did. Yes, and you have an event coming up.
We do.
Yes.
We have a very important fundraiser.
Right.
And this show's called You Make the Difference, and today we want all of you out there to make the difference by being a part of our Blues and Barbecue. It's November 12th. And it's going to be held at Delavant downtown, and we take over both ballrooms, and we have a musical live auction. And I brought a sample of one of the things that's going to be available to bid on. And this is an autographed guitar by Tracy Lawrence and Daryl Worley and some other country music stars. And we have lots of things like this from record albums and sheet music, and there's a couple more guitars that are going to be there. And you can pre-bid on these things by joining us on Facebook at Jessica at Emmaus Shelter on Facebook. And then we also have a silent auction, and there's a giant food tasting, and you can reserve an entire table or buy individual tickets.
Yes.
And all of those are available now. You can email me or call me, and it's at Delavant on November 12th. It's a Thursday night.
Yes.
And that's a critical fundraiser for all of our efforts.
It's your major fundraiser.
It is our major, absolutely. It's the largest fundraiser we have of the year, and all the proceeds will help continue to provide shelter and opportunity for homeless people to get back on their feet.
Yes. And you'll have a band that plays?
Oh yeah, live music.
Yes.
Great food.
Yes.
The Buzz Andrews band is returning from Dallas, Texas, and some local musicians are going to sit in with them. Some guys from Big Muddy are going to play. My husband Ray plays the drums with them.
Yes.
And we've got some sponsorship from Mike Patton this year, and some of their employees are going to jam too.
Oh, good.
Yeah, it's going to be a real eclectic collection of musicians, and it's complimentary to the audience. It's not as much a concert as it is an entertainment show.
Yes.
And you get to mingle with the food and taste different things, and then the silent auction is interspersed through the throughout the ballroom, so you get to wander and shop, and it's a great way to get all of your Christmas shopping taken care of. Trailers Jewelry will be a big sponsor again this year of the auction, and we're excited they're coming back. We have some surprise check presentations we are anticipating, and
yes,
we appreciate DaVita, the dialysis people. They have a real heart for our cause, and they're actually coming back this year because of the way our mission is expanding.
Oh, good. Mm-hmm. Yes, people are excited about the way the mission has expanded.
It's amazing what happened.
Tell us about that.
Well, last year, the Homeless Coalition helped start the Warming Center.
Right.
And I had never experienced a shelter closing before. I've only helped open them, and I was heartbroken at the idea of actually closing the doors and putting people back outside.
When it was still cold.
When it was still cold. And there were people that had homes but no electricity that needed to get warm. And there were precariously housed people that just came to get warm and get some food, but we had people sleep there too. And if anybody recalls that it was extra cold consistently last year, it's because I was praying for it to stay cold so we could keep that shelter open. Because one of the guys I had met under a bridge, we did the point in time count last year, and I did a lot of going under bridges and into bushes and into the place where tents are. And I got to know one gentleman under the bridge who was sick. And we had prayed for him and brought him some food. And then he just got convicted by the Holy Spirit, apparently, and claimed the bridge for the Lord and rededicated himself to God. You know, and he walked in ready for a life change. And it was a man. Well, we had a women's shelter.
Right.
Women and children under the age of 10. And what am I going to do with that man? Put him back under the bridge after he wants to get right? He's gotten right with God and is ready to move forward. And I prayed for that warming center. I prayed for it to get real cold that day. And so we reopened the warming center, and he was able to come inside.
Yes.
And his life has changed significantly because of that. And while we were there, we met a number of other people who seemed like the kind of guys that if they just had a little help, they could move on very well. And so when we closed that shelter, an unusually large number of people seemed to just follow us home.
Yes.
And we became more popular and have now literally seen the door open and close hundreds of times with more people seeking shelter now that they know we exist.
Yes. And so you engaged the men at the day center, right? They followed you to the day center while it was cold during the day, and then went back to the warming center
at night.
And some of those men are still there, right?
Well, the example of a man is still there.
Yes.
We have been very successful in moving just about everybody that was at the warming center into another dimension of their life success. Some of them have cycled back through, but many of them are new men. There are new men there. What occurred was that the warming center had to close, and we need a new one for this year. But the gentleman signed the same handbook, code of conduct that the ladies were following.
Right.
And they were willing to comply if we were willing to provide shelter for them as well. And so all of the ladies that were at the night shelter for themselves, it's totally separate. Men are separate from women. This is not they're totally separate. The ladies, we had some ladies sleeping at the day center at night. They squeezed themselves in, packed themselves tightly, and stayed at the house they live in.
Yes.
And so that we could continue a night shelter for men. And, it just occurs at the day center now. We go from day to night every day.
Yes, and you've developed some relationships with those men who have come, and they have benefited the shelter in many ways, right?
Well, it's wonderful.
Yeah.
God sent an army of strength.
Yes.
And talent.
Yes.
One of the, our whole annual campaign last year was designed by a man I met at the fire station. A graphic designer was homeless.
Yes.
I don't know why, but he was, and he helped create our entire annual campaign. And we found another gentleman who is aged, but used to run 7-Elevens. He runs a great thrift store.
Yes.
We're on a yard sale. And we have had some other talented artists that have helped design things that we were able to help sell for them. And then the carpenters, the partially handicapped carpenters are amazing. And they're doing all of our renovation work for us right now. I'm a big fan of finding their tools and helping them put them to work.
Yes.
And some of them have culinary skills, so they cook.
Yeah. And some of them were able to do outreach for other people who were homeless too, right?
Well, that's pretty much how we operate. We to stay at the night shelter, you have to do one of three things during the day. You have to work on your personal issues. You have to prepare and go to work, prepare for work or go to work, or work one of our projects. Well, working a project may include ministering to another homeless person right beside you. Last night, a lady arrived unaccompanied with a blanket. I immediately turned to the ladies and said, somebody's got to help her find the shower, and somebody's got to help her get some clothes on. And when she came back this morning, she looked like she'd had a makeover.
Yes.
And so the other ladies in the night shelter for women immediately embraced her and made her over. And today when she wanted to do laundry, another lady stepped in and began to teach her how to use our facilities. So we encourage them to care for one another. And one of the most tragic things is we have 3 homeless people that belong in nursing homes, but they don't have any kind of resources to help them get into a nursing home. And so we actually had a nurse's aide that was homeless. Well, as God designed it, we had a nursing home patient. Match them up.
Yes.
It's hard to care for people who have nursing home needs, and they're all taking care of each other.
That's right. Wow. All right, now, the women's shelter, the news was out in the community that we were serving men, needed a men's shelter, and the Matthews building came about.
Yes, it did.
Tell me that story.
Well, a couple of things occurred. Some gentlemen heard about the men needing a shelter, and a man called me and said, do you think you could create a copycat program for men like you do for women? And I had trouble saying no. So
yes.
Of course I said yes, and the Lord's just going to have to give us a place. And at the same time, I got a phone call about available rooms for rent, and that sparked a conversation between me and Mr. Jimmy Matthews. Well, I did not know that the Holy Spirit was working on other people who were also reaching out to Mr. Matthews. And but he invited me over to have a conversation about what Emmaus really does. And I explained that we try to give people the tools they need to work on their lives and require people to work, that we don't just do a hot and cot night shelter, that we have a productive day center. And we're a unique shelter compared to the other ones around the country. We have doing both a day and a night program is complicated, but completely worth it to not put people out in the morning and have them just wander the street, or vice versa. And he and I prayed about it together one day when we met and talked about what could happen with this building. And he decided to give us the old Heartbreak Hotel. It's on Hill Street.
Yes.
And it's actually very near where people live under the bridge.
Right.
And he wanted to continue the legacy of his father, Mr. Ralph Matthews, and continue to care for the community the way that Ralph had cared for it. He had served families, provided employment for families, helped families in different ways. They had been a big provider of rental houses for a long time. They were a big housing solution. And so he wanted to continue Ralph's legacy for men, because men had been the primary tenants of that building. And so we get to renovate the whole building, and it'll eventually be a dormitory shelter and then some transitional housing for gentlemen.
Yes.
Which allows us, the best part about that to me is that Emmaus Women's Shelter was serving women and their children. Well, now we can serve the whole family. Women and their husbands, older sons, brothers, and there's going to be a dedicated space for veterans.
Yes. Now, the Matthews building is an old building, right?
It's 100 years old.
100 years old. And in a 100-year-old building, there are some things that need to be done.
There are a few more than we anticipated.
Yes. So tell us about that, and tell us how the community can get involved in helping us restore that building.
Well, we hope there's a plumber out there. We hope that there is a security company out there, and we hope that there are people willing to adopt rooms. We are doing a campaign, it's called Adopt a Room, where you can help provide the bedding and the lockers and the paint and the love each room needs to be spiritually cleansed and prepared to help renew their minds as we help their bodies and their whole lives get restored. And right now we are, at this moment, I have homeless men who are carpenters working on the roof, and then we're going to work on the plumbing, and we're going to put in sprinklers so that the fire marshal can be very happy with how safe everyone is inside.
Yes.
And so that is that opportunity needs linens, it needs metal bunk beds would be preferred, but we can build them out of wood. And we're also going to begin a new kind of shower and laundry gateway to the shelter. And so we want to create a commercial laundromat in the downstairs of the building so that you can come in and shower and get your stuff cleaned, and we can prevent any kind of, we can limit our germs.
Yes, and that was a nice thing about the Matthews building is that it has room upstairs.
And all that facility downstairs.
And yes.
Yes.
And even like a kitchen downstairs.
It has a kitchen that's fully operational, and it has room for either a mercantile or a day center and or this laundromat concept we have going. And eventually it will have a library, media center, and a place for people to come and do Bible study and teach classes with the gentlemen alone, with just the guys.
Yes, and so this has been a great time for Emmaus because people have begun to give resources and buildings, really. And, and so the Dash of LaGrange also was instrumental in providing some transitional homes. Tell me about that.
We, Dash was ready to release a home, and they may actually release a few more. And they were willing to offer a single family unit.
Yes.
And that, it could be transitional housing, but it's also permanent supportive housing. And we're always looking for houses like that. We would never turn down the gift of a home that we could create a way for a person to stay in with our support, because so many people are homeless because of the precarious nature of their income. If a strict landlord is strict about when the rent is due and can't concede that it's coming,
yes,
then they get evicted. Well, this house that Dash gave us allowed us to be the landlord and then work with the tenant, understanding that their income is precarious.
Right.
So we can underwrite it this week and collect it next week.
Yes.
Sorry. Do you want me to tell you who's there?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
And I want you to tell me how you selected her.
All right. The lady that lives in the Dash house, which is now the Emmaus house, was the very first person that walked into the day center when we began over 5 years ago. The very first love of our life that walked in that we were able to take care of is now the first tenant in this forever home.
Yes, and that's so appropriate, isn't it? And you had been friends with her.
She's a special girl. She is one of the interesting things about how God prepared me to work with Emmaus.
Yes.
She and I were friends in high school, and we ran track together, and she sort of disappeared at the same time my life went down a rocky road. And it was interesting how it's just as if the devil just had his way with both of us. We both walked through darkness, and I found my way back to the light, and then as she pursued light, we ended up back together.
Yes.
I mean, over 20 years later,
yes,
she's who I'm taking care of. And when I lived here in high school, I learned about both sides of the tracks, if you will, the good and the bad, the nice part of town and the ugly part of town, the good behavior and the bad behavior. I was an honor graduate and a troublemaker, and God has a way of turning beautiful things. Takes broken, make it beautiful. I've already walked a mile in their shoes. I know what grace is. I know what forgiveness is. I know what praying parents do for children. I have always been loved, and the difference between me and many of the people we serve are my praying parents, And this lady needed my mama as much as I did.
Yes.
And when she has my mother tutoring her, she's very successful. And so she is now able to be a stable grandmother with a job who can now do better for her children and grandchildren. And so we've helped 3 generations in this one house stabilize and not have to fear where they're going to sleep.
Yes.
So they can work on their education and their career.
Yes. And it's so nice you're willing to share your mama. Some folks aren't willing to share their mama.
Multiply her. If only I could multiply her.
Yeah.
But this family brokenness has a lot to do with the issue. And not all people realize that so many homeless people are orphans.
Yes.
Everybody has died in their family, or they're broken and estranged from their family, and they don't have a mother to call. If they did, they wouldn't come to us.
Yes.
And we hear that story all the time, that their parents died, their sisters died, like they're the only sibling left.
Yes. And so, speaking of your mama, this has become like a family operation, right? It's gotten the whole
daddy's fault.
It's gotten the whole family involved. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, when we created the day center,
yes,
it was able to exist because mother had actually designed an adult daycare, and
for your daddy's
it was in my dad's
practice,
building.
right?
He built a building for his office,
yes,
and created an adult daycare. And at that time, my mother was caring for her elderly parents, and her daddy couldn't go to the senior center because he'd had a stroke.
Yes.
And you couldn't go to the senior center back then if you couldn't carry your own lunch tray with two hands. But he didn't need to be at home by himself if she was gone taking care of her young children.
Right.
And so the concept of an adult daycare evolved. And so they built this great building with daycare facilities for adults. Well, it didn't manifest that way until Emmaus began, and lo and behold, here we're doing adult daycare.
Yes.
A day place for adults was provided. And the need for Emmaus became very clear when a patient of my father's got left behind in the lobby. He called me one day and said, "You've got to come get Deborah. She's homeless." And I took her home with me for 3 weeks.
Wow.
And I gave her to Miss Shirley, my mom, for another 3 weeks. And we found out very quickly we didn't need homeless people in our basements, but they needed a place. And then she and Miss Kay were in a conversation with you about the need for better care for women. And it just sprung up.
Yes, it did.
It sprung up, and now I'm dependent on my brother to create boarding houses so that we can move people out into affordable housing.
That's right.
So all of us are.
And he got interested in tiny houses.
Yep. He's interested in the tiny house so they can live alone.
Uh-huh.
And he's also learning about how to turn his rental properties into boarding houses so that you can rent the tiny rooms within them.
Yes. Now, it takes a lot of money to run the Emmaus shelter, doesn't it?
Well, no, I think we're very fiscally responsible.
Okay.
We are as
yes, we are.
and as tightly wound as we can be. But we do have to raise over $100,000 every year.
That's right.
It's under 2, it's over 1, and we do that all because we have friends, and we have partners, and we have churches, and we have special events. We don't ask the government for any money. We only raise it through private foundations and through people that become friends of Emmaus, and everything's nonprofit, so it's all tax deductible.
And also, Jessica, I have noticed that you can put anybody's talent to work. Like if somebody walks into the Emmaus shelter and wants to volunteer, you know how to plug them in. Tell me about some of the people that you've plugged in at the shelter and how it's benefited Emmaus, but also benefited the person that volunteers.
We have a knack for creating internships that complement a student's pursuit of a goal. Right now we have great, we love it when LaGrange College calls with counseling students. And right now we have a volunteer who thought she was studying counseling, and she's been humbled by how much she's learned by being with us. And she had a knack for organization. And so my office now makes sense. And so that also means she works well in Emma's attic sorting clothes.
Yes.
But that's the perfect opportunity to counsel with people while you work. And not everybody understands that counseling can occur outside of a therapy session.
Right.
But if we're practicing discernment, sorting our donations and hanging things up and getting it all organized, putting her in the to organizing all the clothes with the homeless guests who work in Emma's attic gives her the opportunity to hear their stories and give them advice. And so she is busy all the time and knows what to do when she comes in the door. She grabs some ladies and they go have a good conversation. And other people have been very beneficial to us because I realized that they had computer skills.
Yes.
And something that many students need to practice are database management. And they don't all study Microsoft Office when they're in college, but if they can type and I can teach them some basic Microsoft, then they can learn to enter data. And that helps them get a job, really. That's a skill you can put on your resume. And last quarter we had an accounting student who was able to teach us as much about QuickBooks as he had learned in a class, and now he has a career.
Yes.
Because we were able to let him prove he had learned something. And it helped us tremendously.
Yes.
So we like to do that.
You've had people come and help in the garden.
We do. Our Victory Over Hunger Garden taps into people's green thumb talents.
Yes.
We love when somebody knows how to plant a row better than us. We're going to be doing that soon with Lafayette Christian School. The 6th graders are going to come replant our Victory Over Hunger Garden, the small one.
Yes.
And they're going to learn. We have some talented volunteers who gardening is a passion for them, and so they're going to come connect with this youth group, and then we'll have fresh food right out of our own garden, which then teaches our homeless about where their vegetables come from.
That's right. All right, so now let's review about the Blues and Barbecue.
Okay.
And promote it again. And I also want to promote, I am trying to fill a table.
Yes.
And
please buy Wanda's tickets.
Yes, buy my tickets. So if you want to come to the Blues and Barbecue, the tickets are $50, and I have tickets, and you can contact me. My number is 706-402-5634, or you can call the station here, and they can get in touch with me. I would love to have you sit at my table. Now tell us what's going to be there.
We're going to have a live musical memorabilia auction. We're going to have a huge silent auction where all of your Christmas shopping can be taken care of. There will be an enormous spread of food for you to taste and enjoy, all you can eat, and there will be music that will entertain you and inspire you, and along the way we will teach you a little bit about the cause, and hopefully we will chase those homeless blues away. November 12th, 6 p.m., Delavant, downtown LaGrange. You can email me, Jessica at Emmaus Shelter, for more information too, and we hope you'll follow us on Facebook.
Yes. And Jessica, I just want to thank you for all you do, and thank your mama and your daddy and your brother John too.
And all of the churches in LaGrange are a part of Emmaus.
Oh, yes, they are.
We're just the hands and feet during the week.
Yes.
You know, but we appreciate the fellowship that churches provide for our people. It's so important.
Yes.
That they get pointed back to Jesus, and we are privileged to get to help them do that.
That's right. And I would just like to thank you for everything that you do in the community. And if you have volunteered for Emmaus, we want to say thank you very much. And if you haven't, we would like for you to stop by and visit us at 321 Greenville Street and find out how you can get involved. And remember, you make the difference. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next week.
World